It's funny. I wanted to reach out and chat with you. I knew you were going through some moving logistics, but this I had some really interesting, you know, events occur this past week, and I would, wanted to get your intake. And the more you start to think of this law of attraction, right, and what manifesting, is, and even on this call today we had with Gary and Jessica, right, which I did like the format. I do like the conversational format with Gary. I think he's an excellent conversationalist and a good storyteller, right, and allows everybody to sort of weigh in. But I did, I had this event where I'm helping this group out, and I had this email list, and I had gotten the email list, gathered it from a bunch of different over years, and I shared it with this group that I had no benefit from it, but I wanted them to be successful. And I'm saying, hey, yeah, you know what? Reach out to this group, this community. And, if you use my name and if people ask, right. And I guess this one out of whatever it was, 1,000 emails, one person had responded like, where did you get my email? This is unsolicited. And I'm like, nobody was soliciting anything. It was more about sharing information. But I immediately got this fear. Like, oh my God, there was nothing wrong with, but I immediately got this fear, and it was panic stricken. And I said, oh my God, why do I feel this way? Like, why do I, and then, somebody else had called and been like, oh my God, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, why do I even care? Like, it's none of this matters. Nothing was done wrong. There was no intent. Nobody asked for any money. I mean, there was nothing, right? It was just this. But I literally became frozen. Like I had done something wrong, and I was going to get in trouble.
Right.
And and I'm going to myself, instead of like feeding into it, I said, why do I feel this way? What is it? And then going through that whole manifestation event process, it got back to this. I guess my number one underlining, right? We all have this, is that, that I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be
right.
That's ultimately where it was. And after all those different layers I had gone down, and then like the next day, someone else had called me, and I'm like, and it was fun. I was like, yeah, so what? Like, okay. it was completely gone.
It's interesting, isn't it? Do you think that get into trouble thing, like, is that from school or your parents when you were a child?
And that's exactly where I went. And I went through what I was doing, my writing process. I was always, and breaking the rules is the wrong way to describe it. I was always coloring outside the lines. I had kind of felt there was a different way to do something. And you know how, even if there was always multiple ways to do things, right? But if you don't do it that one way, there are consequences, right? Whatever those may be, societal consequences. And I was always appreciating those societal consequences, and doing things that I felt were right, and should be shared. And people were saying, you can't do that. I'm like, well, why not? And there would just be some sort of punishment, right, that would follow. But I literally immediately when this happened, I was almost shaking to the point of the fear. And I couldn't believe how something so minuscule could create that type of fear in me. But it was overwhelming for maybe an hour or two until I finished that manifestation process.
It's interesting, isn't it? So with the work we've been doing, Joshua and Gary point out that you become dramatically more emotionally sensitive. And I've noticed that minor things happen that most people seem oblivious to. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm having a strong emotional reaction. And I finally realized the other day that these things actually are nothing. It's just that I'm so more emotionally tuned that I really noticed them far more strongly than I ever did before. So, I mean, that's one take on why you might have felt that that kind of really, visceral kind of fear. How it sounds like you felt it physically as well as emotionally. And another thing is that the whole idea of a manifestation event is that if you have a limiting belief, you will receive a manifestation event. And if you process it, then you'll work out what your limiting belief is, so you can reduce the intensity of it. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to end up creating the life you truly desire. So besides the fact that you're probably a lot more emotionally sensitive than you were to things, there's also the idea that there must be quite an important limiting belief in there that you really were ready to process.
I think that was that final one that I'm just not loved, right? I mean, how many times that we all did? It's funny as I look back now, even as a parent, what you hold over your kids. Like for me, I loved playing sports, right? So I was talking about the other day. But my parents would say, you can't play football, you can't play lacrosse, you can't wrestle this season unless you get these grades or unless you do this.
Right.
Right. The thing that I loved the most, they would take away from you. That was the bargaining chip. What do you love?
Yeah.
Well, then, you know what? That's the consequence. So for growing up my entire life, and even you start working, right? Your bonus is going to be taken away. Right? Every good thing in your life is used as that bargaining chip for, if you follow the rules, then you can get this. Now, if you don't, we're going to take it away from you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what, and along with taking that away from you, I'm disappointed in you. I'm angry with you. I'm now going to withhold my love from you. Now, those words may not have been directly spoken, but that was the message. That was
the approval and love became conditional upon behaving a certain way. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we still look at us and people still say, well, that's not right. And I'm like, based upon what? What are you talking about, right or wrong? This is people can do what they want as long as we're not hurting people, right? I mean, people can do whatever they want, but still society will, and there will be a situation. My daughter did a whole math, she's in honors math in high school, but she didn't show the work, or she didn't show the work she was asked to. She got every answer right. The teacher failed her.
Right.
And I laughed. I'm like, honey, she was upset. It's going to ruin my GPA. I said, honey, I'm happy to go to battle for you on this, but I'm like, don't let this, like, you know what you're doing. You're smart. Go talk to the teacher, have a conversation, and don't worry about it. But it was because you didn't follow that. It doesn't make a difference if the outcome was the desired outcome, right? Well, you stepped left instead of right. I'm taking away your perfect 4.0 GPA.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? This is how our kids are being raised.
Yes. So, I mean, that's an interesting point, because you've just processed a major event about that, and working with the realization that the way you get the things you truly want is not following the rules. It's actually by being in alignment, a vibrational alignment with the thing you want, so that you're a match to it. And so you're in a position where you can actually bypass all of that stuff. But then you see your daughter, who is actually, for the time being, stuck in that system, and she kind of has to follow those rules, for a grade points average. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of crazy. And then and I was talking with my cousin Josh, and we were having it, and he's not aligned with us at this point, but he's a very, very spiritual guy, but not on Joshua's teachings. And we were having this conversation about, money and finances and manifesting. And I mentioned it today on the call as well. And he's like, I'm broke. I don't have any money. And I'm like, okay, he's got a company, and he's really done a great job building this company, Black Bear Brands. It's a fashion company, men's apparel company that's sort of like very tough Western sort of style approach, man's man type of stuff. And he lives in a multi-million-dollar house. He has a few motorcycles, each worth there's a few motorcycles that worth close to 6 figures that he's got. These really collectibles, very high end. He's got a boat. He's got cars that are like insane, and he's got a company. And we look back and we started talking. It's like when we were kids, and I wanted a new pair of sneakers. Right, I didn't want a new pair of cleats to go play sport. I need that. I never said I needed money to get it. I just wanted that. I wanted that thing that gave me joy. And then ideas came on how to get that. Either you had a birthday coming up, go ask for it from your uncle, right? Do this, yeah, you could go mow a lawn. Ideas on how to get that came to you, and you then took charge of that. But it always started with this idea of what do you want? And Josh is still, he's a very creative guy. He wanted this beautiful house in, Northwest America that was on a lake, and he got it, right? He didn't get the cash, he got the house, and he got the house on a special deal. He got the bikes on a special deal. He got everything on a special deal, and it wasn't for a price. It was negotiated on an exchange. He's very creative, does a whole bunch of different things, and he can give and barter that way, right? So it's so funny to me if you really look at manifesting and where we make mistakes. And I wouldn't say make mistakes, where we take the long route, the long walk around the lake, is we start thinking I need $1 million to do X, Y, or Z, versus I want to run my own company, and I want to have 150 employees. I'm making up a conversation, right? And you figure out how that manifests, right? Or how that comes to life. Instead, we're like, I want $5 million now. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. It's always money first now. But as a kid, when we were younger, it was the joy of what the thing was.
Yeah. You're making some very good points in there, that we desire something and we imagine there's only one way we can get it, which is with this pile of cash, $1 million or $5 million or whatever the number is. But if you focus on the feeling of the thing and the desire of the thing, oftentimes a creative solution arises and you find you can get that thing in a completely different way, or it's actually something slightly different that you really wanted, you just didn't know it. So my point is, and Joshua talks about this a lot, don't try and be too precise in what your desire is, like, and the exact specification of the house that you want or whatever it might be, because what you really want is the feeling the thing gives you. And there's probably an even more elegant solution to giving you that feeling of the house that you want. And it may or may not be the house that you pictured in your mind.
Well, I mean, well said. And I think about the times I've manifested money or wealth or financial prosperity. It was based upon becoming debt free for a specific amount of money, paying off some element of owed money, where I could picture myself, and I went through the visualization of, of clarifying or cleaning out my debt and rewarding that person who was generous and kind enough to be patient with me, or be patient with the situation, and clear it. And that's always come from 6 figures of lawyer bills that I had no idea I was going to pay. Money came in to take care of it. I'm like, oh my God, but it came in just enough to take care of that, right? From the debt that I had created during that time, that money came in to clear that out, right? You look at all of the stuff that and when you and then when you just sit there and people go, well, I want $1 million, like, and that doesn't come. It's like, there's no reason behind it. Like there's no clarity. And a lot of people, when you talk about, I want to manifest $1 million, I want to manifest wealth, right? I want to manifest, but it's backwards. They're doing it backwards. What are the reasons why you want wealth? Like, what is that making you feel good? How are you so grateful that you can do X, Y, or Z now? Right. And until you connect that point, nothing's ever going to happen for you. So funny. Like I see my cousin, I'm like, he's got everything. And I said, do you have everything you need now? And he looked at me, he's like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you guess so. If you sold everything right now you'd have the $5 million you were looking for. And what would you do? He's like, I go back and buy everything I have.
Yeah.
What do you need then?
It is ironic when, and I'm thinking of an example of a fairly famous actress who's in the news a lot. I won't mention any names. And she's always talking about problems in her life and all the issues she's had and so on. And it's like, don't you see that you have what most people would consider to be the perfect life? Like, you've got truckloads of money, you've got heaps coming in, you've got complete freedom to do whatever you want. And instead you focus on real or imagined, 0.1% of your life, which is, in her opinion, not perfect. And I think she's completely disconnected from how most people live, not understanding that she is in she's created an incredible situation, but she's oblivious to it and can only focus on real or imagined transgressions of others against her. To me, it's like an object lesson in what you're talking about. It's like, don't you realize that you have, if you could just tweak that knob a tiny bit, one click, change your attitude a tiny bit, you have an extraordinary, wonderful, abundant situation. You have enormous freedom. You can do whatever you want for work or never work again, blah, blah, blah. To me, it's like, I can't believe that you've got so much and you think you have so little.
Right. And society does it backwards for us. So society treats us, work for 50 years or whatever the number is, 40 years, and then retire. When you work for those 40 years, you save enough money so you retire. So society has done since the day you and I were born, because that's when this whole savings, right? Save for retirement started to, because that didn't happen in the 20s and 30s. It started happening in the 50s and 60s when you and I were born, right? Especially in the 60s, right? Where, it's all about starting investing, right? Which happened in the 70s and 80s, right? And everybody was like, oh, for your retirement. And it all became about money. Everything became about money. And money was security. Money's what you needed. Money. And I'm like, whoa, it's not about that. It's what are the things you want? How do you want to what brings you joy? And all of that got squashed.
Yeah. So, when I first started hearing Joshua and Gary, for that matter, talking about people following, for example, a corporate career path or a job they didn't necessarily particularly like, I guess I still believed in that whole corporate ladder thing as being something that was very satisfying to people. And they were saying, essentially, for many, many people, they're doing stuff they don't want to do, don't enjoy, don't like, but they're doing it because of a bunch of perceived rewards or reasons, one of which is income and future financial security. And another one is, I think, the carrot on the end of the stick of, well, the position, this particular role is here, but when you get the next promotion, life is going to be amazing. And then you get to the next promotion and then you realize, well, your boss was always so stressed out. And then you think, okay, if I get the next one, then that will be really good. And then so many people get to 45 or something, and midlife, mid-career, and think, actually, this isn't what I want at all. And some people keep doing it. Some people do find real joy in it. I'm not saying people don't, but so many people get to a certain age in their 40s or early 50s and realize, actually, I never wanted to do any of that. Now I'm going to go and do what I really want.
100%. And we're forced into that situation because, once again, that's what society says. And you think about this, when you graduate high school, when you graduate middle school and you're going to go to high school, people say, oh, you're going to have so much fun, right? This is going to be great. You're going to learn so much. And you go to college, right? You're going to be so much fun. And you graduate college, people say, you got to get a job making money. Nobody says fun. Everything's gone. That whole vocabulary changes, right? And then society forces you to take a job because of a salary amount that you think it's going to make you happy. And then after 15 years of misery, then they deemed it, which is all, it seems like everybody's breaking point, and then they deemed it a midlife crisis. I'm like, no, it's our breaking point where the lack of joy, just our soul becomes crushed, and it's got to snap out of it, right? Everybody calls it, midlife crisis. Like, no, it's your soul reaching out to say, hey, you got to stop this. This is not why you're here.
Yeah, I think there is a progression going on, because if you go back not that long ago, we were all hunter-gatherers, right? And so we had to basically find the berries and the leaves and kill the wild beasts to survive. And it must have been a very, very hard life. And so, as Joshua describes it, those ancestors thought of, what if there was a life where I could live in one place and have plenty? And so we became a vibrational match to horticulture and agriculture. And then villages sprang up and so on and so forth. So, and then you had to have trust in the process, as they say, where, well, I plant these seeds and then in several months' time, there's going to be a crop and that's going to feed me, and I can keep it in various ways, preserve it, so it's going to last for the next 8 or 9 months. So that took a leap of faith. And then even in those times, there was still a lot of hardship. physical and financial hardship. And so people imagined a life where they didn't have that kind of hardship. And so look at us, and we are the most abundant group of people in the history of the planet, and there's more money on the planet than there's ever been, and so on and so forth. But so many people just focused on the one thing they think they don't have, rather than the fact that we have the most fabulous lives. As Joshua often says, our lives are better than those of kings and noblemen and noblewomen of yesteryear. Like, we've got everything. And if you think about the reality of your phone, your smartphone, having the internet and all that knowledge and information and communication at your fingertips, you don't have to go back many years for that to seem like sci-fi or a miracle or something. So the next phase, when people started talking about that universal income concept where everybody just got paid regardless, just because you exist, initially I thought, oh, that's a crazy left-wing idea. And I thought I didn't like the idea that there was a disconnect between receiving money and working for it. Like, to me, there has to be that connection, that money doesn't grow on trees. You have to actually work hard and earn it. But then people started putting that argument into, well, robots are going to be doing a lot of the things that we do now, and a lot of jobs will disappear completely. So sooner or later, they will crack this driverless car and truck and probably airplane too, things. So soon enough, pretty much every vehicle on the road will be like autonomous and, an automated vehicle. So we won't need drivers of taxis or Ubers or trucks or anything else, deliveries. That will all be done automatically, and all those jobs will disappear. And sure, different kinds of jobs will come along. Like, you look at life and business coaching, that's a rapidly growing sector. Look at the number of people who get into various kinds of healing and therapy and that kind of stuff. So, which is much more aligned with their soul's purpose for those people. Those are things they would rather be doing than, going to drive a vehicle or going to the office or whatever it may be. So I've heard Joshua allude occasionally to a future where we don't work as we know it anymore. So what I'm saying is, if you go right back to the hunter-gatherers, to agriculture and horticulture, to 50 or 100 years ago, to, my grandparents or whatever, my grandfather, who's no longer with us, he was born in 1901. And, I met him a number of times. He lived in England, I live in New Zealand, but, at the time he was born, flight was just a concept, right? And then one day, like when he was in his 80s, my mother and her brother, his two children, they paid for him to fly out to New Zealand, and they splashed out, and he came business class on Singapore Airlines. And so I thought, wow, here's a guy who's gone from no flights existing at all to the arrival of jet travel, and then flying business class around the world, a working man from the north of England. And so it's that progression. And I'm really curious I've become open-minded about the universal income concept and robots taking our jobs, and whether we'll make new kinds of jobs or whether we will actually be able to go and have fun like we did when we were kids. And the universal whatever will provide. I don't know what the economic model would be, and some people might listen and think this is, crazy, Rob's lost the plot. And but if you went back 50 or 100 years or further back and told each generation about what was going to be the case in terms of technology or horticulture, agriculture, or whatever it might be, villages, cities, if you told each previous iteration of, from hunter-gatherers onwards, what the future would hold, they would think you were nuts, and that, like, well, that's just impossible. There's just no way. And even things we take for granted, like, GPS, for example. I mean, how extraordinary. And as Joshua said, it wasn't that long ago that people were born in a village, they grew up in that village, they never really went more than like 20 or 30 miles from that village, they married somebody from that village or the next village, and their entire universe was, probably a 30-mile radius, and that's it. And now, we're talking about Mars and space exploration and space as a opportunity for travel, for tourism, and so on. So, so I guess my point is, I have no idea what the future of work is going to be, but I do see a progression through what you were describing, of having to work hard and the rewards and blah, blah, blah. And my point is really, I don't think we're stuck in a place with that. I think there is a progression occurring, and maybe your kids will end up having a different reality when it comes to work and money.
Yeah, no, it's funny, the concept, and I didn't even go to that level. It's just for me, um, the idea that, and it's only probably been, if you think about this, for maybe the last 100 years, maybe the last 120 years, maybe it's 150 years, where money has come first, right, over everything else you wanted. Like I wanted food, right? People, to your point, how they wanted other things. They wanted shelter, right? They wanted those other things before money. At some point in the last 150 years, people started saying, I want money before they wanted food, or money before they wanted shelter, or money before they wanted something. And that's sort of where I think everything for us got out of whack. We just wanted more money, more money, more money, but there was never a reason why you wanted it. And now if you're like, well, I can't pay my bill, well, that's a whole different concept, because right, you're getting in that. And if it is all just about, I want to have fun again, I want to be able to enjoy myself. And you look at this woman that was on a call today, she resigned from her company, she's still making a paycheck. So there is, it's still your concept, whatever you want to call it, it is occurring for people who are becoming vibrationally aligned with that. And that's the whole concept, right? Can you become vibrationally aligned with wealth, abundance, and prosperity in a way where where you open it up and you align with it and it flows to you, where you're no longer resisting it. And all we do is resist it, because all we do is say, I don't have $1 million in my bank. I want $1 million in my bank. So as soon as you say, I don't have it, you resist it, right? If you look at the Conversations with God, right, that the book, which is a great book you would enjoy, right, where I think the opening chapter, the conversation with God, is he channels this conversation with the universe, which he refers to himself as God. He said, I don't ever answer a prayer. I would never answer a prayer. A prayer is from a place of lack.
Right. Yeah.
Right. He's like, well, I'll answer any conversation in gratitude. Right. And it's like that wish fulfilled. We talk, however you want to say it, right? If you are coming at it from a place of fulfillment, of a place of joy and happiness, it's you remove the resistance, you grease the wheels. If you're coming at it of a place of I want to feel better, well, then you feel, okay, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? And it's so funny that's the struggle, because we're taught to pray as kids to ask for what you don't have. Right? That's why you pray to God, or you're supposed to pray to God.
Yeah, which Joshua says, well, you're just going to be exploring more lack. So you're saying to the universe, I don't have this and I'm exploring lack, and the universe says, no problem, we have endless lack. We have an abundance of lack. Be my guest, go right ahead. Would you like some more lack? Yeah, we have as much as you could possibly want.
Yeah, and so for me, like this week it's crazy. Like I don't know why, but the conversation with Josh about the process that you went through as a kid of desire, right? Of what you desired, right? I want this to have fun. It sort of shook me in a way that I had not processed it before, where I was like, oh my gosh, I asked for things in the past. I want those cleats because I want to go play football and I want to have fun. And I would go play football and I'd be like, God, if I had cleats, I'd be doing so much faster. This is fantastic. I love this. And all of a sudden you'd have them like, great. And then it was just all part of what it was, right? It was, I'm like, I can't play today. I never said I can't play. I don't have cleats.
Yeah.
I can't play with you guys. I don't have the right shoes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, now we say that I don't have enough money to go on vacation. Think about that. We actually do it now. We do that whole process. It's bare ass backwards. And we learned that. So for me, my epiphany was on this manifestation event, and then on this call for manifestations, where we're same week, a few days apart, and very, very big for me. I was like, whoa. I'm like, and like I want to just tell everybody. And it's funny, I talk to people and like they're like, oh, I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Mm.
Where I'm like, I'm really feeling like this was something for me. It was a trigger. It was an epiphany in my
Yeah,
mental
yeah, yeah,
process.
absolutely. I mean, you attracted that conversation and that exploration. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
very, very
the,
interesting.
the other day, when I was going to buy a lottery ticket, I thought, am I buying this because it's fun and entertainment and, the thrill of checking your numbers or tapping the app or whatever? And, or am I actually exploring a limiting belief of lack in that? Do I imagine that the only way I can instantly get 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 million or whatever the number is that week, by winning the lottery, right? Like, well, ignoring whether I truly want that amount of money or not, let's say I do, then I realize, if I believe that that's the only way I'm going to make a lot of money, then I'm just going to be exploring more lack. And so, anyway, I had a minor examination of my motivations and thoughts around buying a lottery ticket.
I like that. And I would, and it's funny. So I would buy a lottery ticket, and at night when I would dream as if I had won that. How would it feel? What would I feel like? And I would buy a lottery ticket, and it would, in my mind back then, it was permission to dream about what you could do with all that money. Because without buying that lottery ticket, there was no chance I could ever possibly come across that much money, right? First. So for me, buying a lottery ticket was an exercise in lack. It absolutely was.
Yeah, but from your business experience over the years that you've been in situations where you can create a huge amount of value in the worth of a business, in your shares in your business. And I've been through the same thing, that you can actually create a huge amount of financial value, like a dollar figure, with a disproportionately small amount of effort, because of the nature of how finance markets work and valuations of businesses. So, and anybody could actually do that, right? To create a valuable business, and the business is worth a multiple of its earnings, and suddenly you're making good income, but suddenly people want to buy a business for many millions of dollars. And I realized that the times I've made most money in business was not really my direct effort at all. It was other things, deals, and having people working for me and various other things. That the years when I made the most income, and also when I made the most money by selling out of the business, it wasn't really about effort and struggle at all. There was not, this amount of hourly work relates to the amount of dollars, and it becomes disproportionate at that point.
That's a crazy realization, right? You just said, because now I'm thinking back at that as well. And wow, the time I've made the most amount of money truly were things that sort of were connections to, but weren't a direct result of. Right? You're right. I mean, it's funny how we think that it's all about struggle and effort.
Yeah,
struggle and
you
effort.
made most of your money from your ideas.
Yeah.
Over the years, income and capital, value, it's all about ideas, really, creative ideas.
It really is. Hey, listen, I got a text from my kid. I have to cut this short. She's stuck in high school. She was supposed to be picked up by a friend, and her friend bailed her out. So I got about another 3 or 4 minutes here.
Okay, I'll just tell you a story about an interview with a guy I read in the newspaper here. He's a New Zealand guy who lives in a rural area. He developed this business and he sold it to maybe like a NYSE listed company. And he walked away after years of working. He worked hard. He loved what he was doing, but he sold it for $600 and something million. And he talked about winning, because we play rugby here, right? That's our football, our main football. So he was so poor at one stage because he put everything into the business that after rugby training, when everybody would have a beer, he would run home because he didn't have the money for a beer. And anyway, so they got this money, and he said to his wife, "Let's buy a villa in the south of France." And she said, "Well, why? Because nobody would come and visit us." And he's like, yeah, that's not a very good idea after all. And so the point was that with all that money, sure, they could do that. But she's like, well, family and friends visiting us, that's number one to me. And so whatever we do with it, that needs to facilitate that, because that's my greatest joy. And then he said, you know what? I realized that I'm happiest when I'm wearing my, like his pair of shorts, his rugby shorts, right, which is kind of scruffy, around the house wear. And I'm in my vegetable garden and wearing rugby shorts in my vegetable garden, that's my happiest thing. And so he said, I grow so many vegetables now, I have to give them away to our friends because I grow too many. But I thought this is really interesting because, and they've stayed living where they were living. And most of their money, they've, got some charitable causes they are really interested in. And they're very interested in horses. So they did buy the most prestigious racing stables in the country, but which is a pretty extravagant way to explore your interest in horses. But they're interested in animal welfare and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, it was just interesting to me that he was kind of like a chapter in the book called The Millionaire Next Door. I think it was written by Thomas Stanley, and his premise was most people who got a lot of money, sold a business or whatever, or making a lot of money, are not like the people you see publicly. What you see publicly is the people who flash it around, and therefore they have the money. But he said most millionaires, when he did the research, well, more than a millionaire now, you don't know they're millionaires because they've got a business, they're making a lot of money, but they still live in the same house, they still have the same friends. You ask them why they didn't buy a fancier car, it's like, well, I put all my fishing gear in the back of the car and it gets smelly and it will rust out. So why would I get a better car than, that I'm just going to ruin with my fishing gear because I love fishing. And, it was that kind of, so he said, it's the guy next door. You don't necessarily even know he's got a lot of money. And so most people's perception is you live this, kind of jet lifestyle, the conspicuous rapper lifestyle. But in fact, it's not like that at all.
It's what we've been talking about. You just like almost came this full circle, right? Which is crazy. It's like, so the really wealthy people put their love and their joy first and the money second. Everybody else is saying money, 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 these things, which isn't bringing them the joy and the love. So those things don't really last, and they're kind of tough to hold on to, right? And they struggle. But the people that are just, I'm fishing every day. Yeah, I'm making money, but I still just want to, they're enjoying themselves, right? It's like, if you live your life in joy, everything else gets worked out. Right. And it's the fact that we struggle to have these things. Right. And that's where we continue to struggle to have these things. Right. And you can see those people that have money and have the nice cars and the nice houses. But I mean, are they really having fun? To your point, like,
yeah,
you're in the south of France, but no, you're not seeing your friends, you're alone. That may be, good for some people, but
yeah,
it's super interesting. Right. When you start thinking about that concept, because what you just said almost brings this thing, with like what I was talking about with Josh about, it's kind of shaken me to this, like, oh my God, I've been thinking about this so wrong for so long. No wonder I kept getting it and losing it, getting it and losing it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll leave it at that. But next time I want to talk to you about a couple of things. One was losing the joy of things when you have everything, and then rediscovering that joy, the joy of life and simple things. And also about a discussion I had with a friend about highly paid English soccer players. And his premise was they all look so happy walking off the pitch because of all the millions of pounds going into their bank account. And I said, well, it could be the joy of football. Anyway, there was more to explore there.
That's a great discussion to have. I agree.
Anyway, I'll let you go and do what you need to do, and I'll see you next week.